Calorama, a recorded books hybrid imprint, presents Capitalism and Crises, How to Fix Them, by Colin Meyer, read by Bob Souer. Preface. As I write this book, the world is in crisis. No, scrap that. The world is in multiple crises. There is war in Europe, a drought, floods, a pandemic, an energy crisis, a food crisis, a climate crisis, and a crisis in our democratic and political systems. There was a financial crisis. There is now inflation and recession. No doubt by the time you listen to this, there will be others. Crises are increasing in frequency and growing in intensity. Their frequency and intensity will continue to increase until we solve the problem. The problem is our capitalist system. It is a source of remarkable prosperity, growth, employment, and poverty alleviation. But it is also a cause of terrible suffering, disasters, inequality, environmental degradation, and social exclusion. And they are getting worse. This book is about solving the problem. It is the third in a trilogy that I have written on what's wrong. The first, Firm Commitment, was about the problem. The second, Prosperity, was about the solution. This is about the transformation, the fundamental change in our capitalist system needed to fix it. The first book identified the absence of trust and commitment in a capitalist, market-driven system as the problem, the second purpose as the solution. This is about how to get us from where we are to where we need to be, the fundamental transformation from lack of trust and commitment to purpose. The first two books laid the foundations for what has gone wrong, why, and what is needed. Not a revolution, but a reformation, learning from the future as well as the past, crafting our future in the way in which we wish it to be, not being a slave to the past, but a respecter of it. The first book was about one of the most important institutions in our lives, business. The second broadened the horizon to economies and the law. This book extends the horizon to all our institutions and organizations, economic, legal, political, public, social, as well as commercial, and emphasizes that there are common approaches to bringing about the transformation required of all of them. Key to appreciating this is to recognize our institutions and organizations as systems that need fundamental change to reboot them. This is not about meddling on the sideline with a few policy instruments, changing one or two things here and there. It requires a coherent, consistent set of policies to coordinate the necessary changes. Equally, it is not about discarding or weakening what is good and what works. It is about strengthening and reforming existing structures so that they are fit for purpose for the 21st century. They are not fit for purpose at present, suited to a minority, leaving the rest poor, disadvantaged, inadequate, excluded, and aggrieved. Our capitalist system has been the source of immense and unsustainable dissatisfaction that threatens our politics, societies, economies, and environment. We need to fix it fast. That will not happen so long as it is not in people's interest for it to happen. If it doesn't make money for business and investors, then it is pie in the sky and wishful thinking. However much we may believe in the goodness of leaders, investors, communities, and societies, if it is not profitable, it is not possible. In fixing the system, we need to be realistic about what it takes to fix it properly. Profit should be recognized for what it is, the driver of one of the most important institutions in our capitalist system, business. It is the reason why business exists, what it is there to do, its reason for being, namely, its purpose. Business exists to make money. Profit powers progress, and progress produces prosperity. But profit also produces problems of petrifying proportions, and capitalism has become a cause of continuous and increasingly uncontrollable crises. Profit has been both a blessing and a curse, and it has become increasingly a curse as the problems it creates have intensified. Why? The answer is that profits come from causing as well as solving problems. Profits are earned at the expense as well as to the benefit of the environment, our health, homes, neighborhoods, communities, and societies. They should not be. They should come from solving our problems, not creating them. Business exists to make money, and the purpose of business is to profit, but the question that we have failed to ask is, where does that money come from? What is the source of that profit? If it comes from solving problems of others, that is all to the good. If it doesn't, then it isn't. Profits should be the product of solving, not producing problems, and the purpose of business is to profit from producing solutions, not problems for others. In other words, the purpose of business is to produce profitable solutions for the problems of people and planet, not profiting from producing problems for either. Profits then come, as they should do, from producing solutions, not problems. The importance of this is overwhelming. It is not just about saving our planet or protecting our health and well-being. More fundamentally, it is about aligning our minds with our motives. The pursuit of profit has made our motives misaligned with our emotions of what it means to be human, and the morality of money has become an oxymoron. It need not and it must not be if capitalism is to be a cure, not a cause of catastrophes. Once profit is recognized for what it is, namely the product of solving the problems of others, then far from being misaligned, our emotional and reasoned motives are aligned with each other and with the world around us. Profit derives from the resolution, not the creation of problems, and with that comes the power to harness global resources for the benefit of all, including the world itself. There is another reason why this is so important. It is critical for the functioning of markets and economies. So long as people can profit at the expense of others, then they will. Those who don't will look stupid, naive, sanctimonious, and self-righteous. The corrosiveness of unjust profit should not be underestimated because profiting at others' expense undermines those who do not wish to profit in that way. It contaminates competition and causes it to do exactly the opposite of what economics suggests it does: promote human well-being. Some believe it is impossible to have the nice bits of capitalism without the nasty, innovation without destruction, efficiency without redundancy, profit without problems. That misses the point. So long as the nasty is permissible, the nice will be impossible. The drive to innovation, efficiency, and profit is intensified, not diminished, by a focus on solutions without problems. Preventing profiting from problems makes profiting from solutions the only course of action. It moves our minds as well as money not just to profit but to where profit is just. It creates justice as well as respects it. It is empowering, enabling, and enriching as well as caring, communal, and considerate. Furthermore, while profit is naturally associated with business, it is relevant to all aspects of our lives, economies, governments, and societies. We should not accept that current generations profit at the expense of future ones. A country or region benefits to the detriment of another. One person or group prospers at a cost to another, or humanity flourishes from the extinction of the natural world. These are examples of unjust enrichment, one party gaining at the expense of another. As capitalism has grown and powered ever greater prosperity, it has simultaneously intensified the scale of unjust enrichment that has occurred at the expense of individuals, communities, societies, and the natural world. We should be protected from this and instead be enriched where we enrich. But this is not just or predominantly about distribution of income and wealth between rich and poor. It is about contribution as well as distribution. It is about growth, development, prosperity, and flourishing, innovation, investment, finance, and risk-taking. It is about promoting our individual and collective contributions to these because currently our capitalist system is doing exactly the opposite. How can this be if profit is the engine of growth? The answer is that by mismeasuring profit, we are misallocating all our resources, not just existing ones, but also future and unforeseen ones. In principle, our economic system is self-equilibrating in identifying profitable investment opportunities wherever they may be hiding, leaving no money on the table, as it is often described. Where opportunities are greatest, so too is funding, and the taps of capitalist finance flow to where their needs and benefits are largest. And if social needs exceed private benefits and markets fail to supply what is required, don't worry, the benevolent hand of government will rush in to fill the vacuum that private capital leaves behind. If only. Unfortunately, that is exactly the opposite of what happens. Finance does not flow to developing or impoverished people, places, countries, or regions of the world. It is allergic to them and instead attracted by the developed and rich. Why? Because that is where the money is and the purchasing power lies. It is not just grossly unfair, but incredibly inefficient. But that is not the role of the private sector. That is the role of government and public sectors, is the predictable retort of those who fundamentally do not believe in government, but rush to its defense when it is convenient to do so. In principle, it is the role of government to fill the vacuum, but in practice it does not. Governments are no less and, in some respects, more prone to the same pressures as the private sector to go where the money is. They are by no means fully liberated from the constraints of funding that restrict their less enlightened private counterparts. Living within your means is the analogy that former UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher drew in justifying fiscal austerity in the 1980s. The problem is that we have fundamentally misconceived the whole system, private and public. Both are driven by the wrong measure. I have called it profit because it is easy to grasp the inequality of profiting at the expense of others. But it applies to all forms of income, personal and corporate, public and private, individual and social, national and international. All of them are grossly mismeasured because we do not subtract the income that derives from producing detriments from that which comes from creating benefits. To take an obvious example, much of our expenditure in income from pharmaceuticals and public health is simply reversing the damage done by expenditure in income from alcohol, cars, cigarettes, social media, and pollution. We are counting as income and well-being what derives from exactly the opposite. But even that does not capture the real underlying cause of the problem. It comes from a confusion of cause and effect. We should not be pursuing the money, but pursuing solutions to problems. We should be searching out where there are problems that you, me, our families, friends, communities, nations, and natural world face, and we should solve them. We should all be doing that to our full capabilities. And we should all be assisted and equipped in doing that because that is why we exist. As Plato in 387 BC Greece and then Cicero in 44 BC Rome reminded us, we exist to help others to be able to help others and, in the process, to earn and profit from doing so. But income and profit are not the motive or the purpose of our existence. They derive from it. That is at the heart of why our capitalist system is going so awry. If we pursue money, then we inevitably leave out the vast body of the world, let alone the entire natural world, which does not have it. And don't believe that it is just a matter of time, that all will be well in the long run. Those at the bottom of the pile need fear not, because the trickle-down of the treacle will eventually be within their grasp. Only it won't. It is not simply a problem that, in the long run, we are all dead, or even that we will all be dead in the short run, which on current trajectories we will be, but that, in the short or long run, the poor will remain poor, the deprived places will remain deprived, the rich will get richer, and the natural world won't be on the map. The system is not self-equilibrating. It is exactly the opposite so long as money is the objective and well-being is derivative of its competitive pursuit, because those who haven't got it are increasingly excluded from the game. Turn the objective round to promoting their well-being and money being the outcome, and then the excluded are included by a combination of technological, business, social, and public innovations making it possible for them to be so. That is why I talk about problem-solving and creation, not just social well-being and welfare. We must be actively productive in addressing defects, not just reactively distributive in redressing them. This comes from an appreciation that our problems derive from a deficiency in the fundamental moral foundations of not just Western civilizations and capitalism, but indeed many civilizations around the world, namely the Golden Rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Enlightened as it appears, its consequences have been exactly the opposite. It has created polarization, not unification, self-interest, not common interest, a cult of individualism, not communitarianism. The reason is that it is self-referential. It tells us to recognize the world beyond ourselves and to act according to the interests of others, but to do so through the lens of our own, not their, eyes. It imposes our, not their, preferences and priorities on our conduct towards them. I do to them what, were I them, I would wish them to do to me. In contrast, a reformulated golden rule of do unto others as they would have done unto them requires us to regard and act towards others in a form that recognizes and respects them for who and what they really are and want to be. Benefit yourselves from doing to others what truly benefits them. It is more demanding on us, and that may explain why it was not expressed that way, but its application is transformational in how we live our lives and run our institutions and organizations. Where did we go wrong? The answer is right at the beginning. The capitalist equivalent of the Messiah came to earth in the guise of Adam Smith. He delivered us our capitalist learnings, but we only read half of them. It was as if we forgot to turn over the tablet of stone and failed to read what was on the other side. It was what I did in the first exam I ever took at school. The last question on the exam page was a list of abbreviations, for example, e.g., which I was expected to explain. I could do all of them except the last one, which was PTO. I had no idea what it meant, so I didn't, failed to turn over the page, omitted half of the exam, and failed it. Well, we have done the same with Adam Smith, only in reverse order. We have avidly consumed his second book, The Wealth of Nations, while conveniently forgetting its predecessor, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. So we have willingly accepted the story that Get Rich Quick helps to promote markets that temper our avaricious greed, but fail to attend the previous lesson on the moral preconditions that are required for this to work, and without which markets far from being benign become perniciously malign. With the emergence of capitalism came the division between left and right in politics, and in particular the distinction between public and private ownership of the means of production. For the left, the obvious resolution to the problem of public interest was public ownership. For the right, the obvious problem with public ownership was private interest. For those in the middle, no one was interested in owning their problems. And there is the nub of the problem. Ownership is not about owning the means of production, the assets, but owning the problems those assets are there to solve. No one owns most of the assets used in production, and no one at present takes ownership of the problems they create. We shouldn't start with the ownership of assets and fix the problems that causes. Instead, we should start from the ownership of problems and then determine the assets needed to fix them. That, amongst other things, corrects the failure of macroeconomic austerity to invest in the human capability and physical capacity required to address inequality in opportunity and income. This book describes how to achieve the required transformation of our world by recognizing the reason why we exist and what that implies for all aspects of our lives and institutions. Is it feasible and practical or wishful thinking to expect this to happen? Not only is it possible, it is simply good management, sound policy, and best practice in private, public, and philanthropic sectors. It does not require a change in corporate law. It is the basis on which corporate law in some parts of the world can be interpreted, and corporate success can generally be assessed. It is precisely the way in which at least one country, Denmark, with one of the highest levels of income per capita, lowest levels of inequality, and highest indices of happiness in the world, is run. This is not wishful thinking, but it is thinking that starts from what we want and works back to how to get there. Don't just take what is as given and immutable. We have created our capitalist system, and we have the potential to mold it in the form in which we wish and need it to be. That is exactly what this book does. Firm commitment identified lack of commitment and trust as the problems to be solved. Prosperity, purpose, and prosperity as the solutions. This book is about problem-solving and profits to fix capitalism and its crises. It begins by describing where we are, how we got here, and the problems that have arisen as a result. It sets out the principles that should determine where we are aiming and want to be. It then turns to how to go from here to there, and the systems change, the laws, ownership, governance, measures, performance, finance, and investment required to get us there. It provides a coherent and practical program of reform which takes what we have and describes what should change to deliver what we need and want. If we can do this, then far from the cataclysmic collapse that many fear, the 21st century will deliver unimaginable rewards for the many, not the few, for the future as well as the present. The book has been guided by the circumstances and experiences of the last few years as the coronavirus pandemic subsides, the Russia-Ukraine war rages, the climate crisis grows ever more alarming, and governments of Western democracies become even more dysfunctional. What these events reveal is an intense vacuum of the global leadership the world so desperately needs. We have created a system that promotes self over common interest, ideology over pragmatism, profit over purpose, nation-states over global concerns. We have lost sight of where we are going, how we should get there, and how collectively and collaboratively we can address the immense and growing problems we face. Towards the end of writing this book, I underwent 2 cataract eye operations. The remarkable feature of such operations is their power to transform how one sees the world. But so too can ideas, and while eyes last no longer than their owners, ideas can endure forever. Come with me as I explain how a few simple ideas may yet help us to restore our faith in humanity and its capitalist system. Colin Meyer, Oxford, 31st of January, 2023. Introduction. Economics is not just about the relation between ends and scarce means, but also what lies between them in avoiding detriment and fulfilling potential. Capitalism. Capitalism is a remarkable system. It delivers the food we eat, the clothes we wear, the houses we inhabit, the entertainment we enjoy, with no conductor, director, or leader at the center to coordinate or control the process. In fact, it does it far better than any individual could because no one possesses the knowledge or information required to achieve that feat. It is as if billiard balls randomly bumping into each other suddenly align themselves of their own accord in producing beautiful patterns and arrangements that not even the most advanced computers could replicate. Capitalism is not only magical, it is the 21st century Sun King we have all come to worship and to whom we should give thanks for each night before we go to sleep. How does it achieve this? The answer is through an incredible system of conversion. It converts our individual self-interests into a collective good. What do I mean by this? Well, let me illustrate by insulting you. You know you are selfish. You might think that you are a saint in looking after others, your families, your friends, the sick and the elderly, but let's face it, you do those things because they make you feel and look good. Sure, you are better than people who do not gain any pleasure from helping others, but your interest in other people is only as good as the pleasure you gain from it. You might legitimately quibble with my bleak picture of your goodness, but stick with it for a moment. What capitalism does is not dig deep into your psyche and determine whether you really are a saint or a sinner in saintly disguise. It does not care in the slightest whether you are simply selfish. In fact, in some respects, it rejoices if you are, because it likes tackling tough problems. However selfish you are, it converts your selfishness into a collective good. Why? Because the more your greed and selfishness mean you want something, the more you are willing to pay for it. And the more you are willing to pay, the more someone is willing to provide it. And the more they are willing to provide, the more they will pay people to produce and finance it. There, in a nutshell, we have the essence of capitalism and free markets. No one needs to tell you how to behave or what you should produce or whom you should employ or finance. A series of chain reactions set off a process that automatically delivers the desired outcomes. It creates a self-igniting bonfire of virtues from a cesspit of vices. Alongside this remarkable productive capacity, capitalism has one further and some believe even more important characteristic, and that is free choice. It grants us what is sometimes termed agency in determining our course of action and conduct. The absence of a central planner, conductor, or director means that there is no one dictating our lives. We can determine what we do, purchase, consume, invest, squander, and save. In other words, it grants us the freedom that once liberated us from serfdom and oppression and delivered us self-determination from evil demagogues. Not bad. Capitalism converts selfishness into the common good and oppression into freedom. No wonder any attack on capitalism is regarded as a fundamental threat to our liberties, rights, and interests, and provokes knee-jerk hostility. It is to be defended as much as democracy, human rights, health, and happiness. No ifs or buts. Even a mild questioning of the merits of capitalism risks your being tarred with the brush of communism or socialism, a central planner wolf disguised in capitalist's sheepclothes, the most dangerous of them all. But as with many zealots, the capitalism creationists undermine the very principles of freedom and liberty for which they stand. They deny the right to contemplate another world. It is not that capitalism is without immense merits, and it is not that the alternatives of socialism and communism are not without tremendous defects and dangers. It is just that the denial of the capitalism creationists shuts their eyes to the possibility that capitalism may have its own deficiencies, let alone that there could be an alternative that does not entail the horrors of central planning. Is there anything wrong with capitalism? Competition. Let's go back to your pursuit of what you want and how a market-based system responds by delivering it at a price. What price? The answer is the right price, a price that equals the cost of producing and delivering what you want. How do we know it is the right price? The answer is that if it was anything less than the cost of producing what you want, then no one would provide it, and if it was any more, not only would someone be eager to produce it, but everyone would because it is profitable to do so. In other words, there will be competition to meet your selfish demands that will push down the price to precisely the cost of meeting them. It is not just that the market delivers you choice, it provides it through competition that ensures it is delivered at a fair price that equals the cost. That is the real ingenuity of the market. All those calculations of determining costs and prices are done by every consumer and supplier acting entirely independently without any external intervention. Adam Smith's invisible hand. Competition is therefore a, if not the, key to the story. It is not just miraculous that all the billiard balls align themselves of their own accord. Even more impressively, if there were only a few of them, then they would not create the remarkable patterns we observe. Without competition, the great calculating machine of the market will not compute the right prices or charge you the correct amount for satisfying your selfish demands. Capitalism without competition is like Picasso without a paintbrush, a poor reflection of its real image. All that government must therefore do is set the rules of the game by which competing firms play and ensure that they abide by the rules. Where the rules are violated, then offending firms should be penalized. Beyond that, government is regarded by market advocates as a spoiler, not a helper, an impeder, not a facilitator. But for others, that is not the end of the story. Trust and trust busters. Every year for the past 39 years, Ipsos Mori, the market research company, has been undertaking a survey of which professions people trust to tell the truth. Each year they ask 1,000 people the same question. Now I will read you a list of different types of people. For each, would you tell me if you generally trust them to tell the truth or not? It is one of the largest, longest-running, and most careful surveys of trust undertaken anywhere in the world. At the top of the professions that people trust the most, I am pleased to say alongside doctors, nurses, and teachers come university professors. We might have no power, pay, or prestige, but at least people trust us to do nothing, earn nothing, and take no credit for it. Near the bottom come business leaders, just ahead of estate agents, realtors, professional footballers, and journalists. And
Sample complete. Ready to continue?